I set out to make my own Sonic Runner game, from building a bright and colorful world to creating Sonic himself, and maybe making something cursed. I had to get super creative to pull this off, but by the end I made something fast, fun, and honestly kind of awesome. Let me show you how I did it. The first thing I wanted to do was make sure the game would look good, and I wanted to have a nice cartoony effect, so the first thing I did was I made this blue skybox, and I made it so there weren't any shadows. Next, I created this texture to go on the ground that looks like the Sonic map texture, and I tiled it a few times, and I already love how colorful and vibrant everything is looking. Next, we needed a Sonic, and for this project, I wanted to try and make everything myself. So, I looked up some Sonic 3D models for reference, and I've never been very good at making 3D models in Blender, so instead I used Blockbench, and I started modeling. About halfway through making this, I was actually really impressed with how it was looking. Then I got to the end, and it still looked really good. But then, next came the texturing. I've never been really good at drawing, and I know the face is kinda cursed, but hey, now it has more personality. On top of that, since this is going to be a game like Subway Surfers, you will only see his back, and you don't have to worry about seeing the creepy face. Anyways, next we needed animations. I hopped into Mixamo and rigged him up, and then I started looking for a run and a jump animation. I'd originally gotten a slide animation, but I realized Sonic probably wouldn't be sliding into enemies, he would roll. And I couldn't find a rolling animation, so that meant I had to make one myself. I decided to make the animation by just bunching Sonic up into a ball and then he would start spinning. It's nothing fancy, but I don't think it looks too bad. After I had all the animations picked out, I needed to add some movement and tie it all together. I wrote up a quick script to allow Sonic to run, jump, and slide, and also move from side to side. This is actually looking pretty good and it's feeling pretty satisfying. I also made it so if you press the down button when you're in the air, you'll get pushed down to the ground and start rolling right away. Now that's the basic setup for Sonic. Next, we needed some obstacles. The first one I created was this palm tree. It's similar to one of those construction walls in Subway Surfers that would just completely block off a path. The next thing I made was a crab, and I ended up making this model when I was bored in school, and I'm so happy with how it turned out. I love the vibrant and cartoony colors. Then, when I got home, I wanted to give it some animations, but I must have exported it wrong, and now I can't rig it up in Blender. Because of this, I needed to get creative, and I made this stretching animation that looks like the pinchers closing. And for the final obstacle, I made this spiked gate that you will need to duck to get through. Now we had the obstacles, the next up we needed to make Sonic interact with them. However, before we did that, we needed to make everything move. Now, in runner games, you either have two options. Either you make the player move, or you have the whole world move around the player. I decided to go with option 2 of making Sonic stay in place because I thought it would be easier to manage everything and not have to move on forever. So, to do this, the first thing I did was make it so everything is always moving at the same speed backwards. The next thing I did was make it so the ground would go on forever, and for this, I made it so when it hits a certain point behind you, it would spawn a new one in front of it, and it would go on forever. I also gave it this little spawning animation, and now Sonic could run without ever stopping. The next thing I needed was to make the spawner for the obstacles. There were a few ways I could have gone about doing this, but I decided to make a spawner that spawns obstacles at the same position in one of the lanes, and they will move backwards towards you at the same speed. Now that we have everything moving at you, we needed to make Sonic have real mechanics. Before we did that, we needed a way to die, and for that I decided to go with a particle system. I created this black cube particle and I gave it a little animation, and I set up the game to stop when you run into an obstacle. I also set it up so you're able to kill the crabs if you roll into them, and then I reused the particle system for Sonic dying and I gave it to the crabs, but I changed the object to the rings and made it gold. Speaking of rings, we needed to make some for Sonic to collect. I copied the same ring shape I used for the particle system, and then I copied the same spawning effect I made for the obstacles, and I threw it into the game. And when you collect a ring, your score will go up by 50. The last thing I did was I made the game speed go up the farther you went, and that was all the gameplay. After that, I decided to add some clouds just to make the game look a little bit better, and I also added these speed lines that add the effect of Sonic going fast, and it makes you feel like you are Sonic. Then finally, I created some UI to show your score and a screen that pops up for when you die, and I gave it this cool animation to fall into place, and a button that lets you restart. I was actually playing around with the camera and I gave it this really interesting third-person POV if you moved the camera down to Sonic. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. So that's how I made Sonic into an endless runner. I'm really happy with how this turned out, and I love the vibrant colors and effects it has. Thank you so much for watching this video, and go check out another video that YouTube thinks you'll love.